Hello everyone, this is Eagle Owl. I'm making a video on everything that you would want to know about how to get a fire started and how to keep that fire going. Now obviously I'm not going to list every single possible item that could be used to start a fire known to man, and I'm not going to go over every single thing in the universe because it would be a 5-hour video, but you get the point. I'm going to be pretty thorough with it. So let's let the games begin. I got some items out here to go over with. Okay, first of all, I want to mention some methods to actually light the fire. Now, I'm not going to talk about primitive methods like twisting a stick back and forth until you see smoke starting, because we live in a modern world and it takes no effort whatsoever to throw a 99-cent lighter in your pocket. It takes up no space really. Keep one in your car, keep one in your house. So for all practical purposes, I'm going to list things that you can buy that start a fire. Okay, now these right here, I'm the only one operating the camera because my daughter's not right here. So here we go. Here's a couple of cool devices. This is an electric arc lighter, and what they do is there's a little USB port right here, which is very common. It's a USB 2 mini port. Instead of a fire, you can see it makes an electrical spark. The cool thing about that is you can recharge it after you've lit it so many times, and it's basically an unlimited supply because all you need to do is every so many uses plug it in overnight. So that's pretty cool. Another method I would like to mention is there's a company called UCO. And they're real big in camping supplies. What you can order from them is this. When you type in storm-proof matches, you can either get just the matches or you can get them in the sealed container. This container has a rubber O-ring, and they put 25 matches in here that are thicker than normal. They're more heavy duty, and they burn really hot. And what they do is there's a striking pad on the side, and they give you like 2 extra when you order it. So there's like 3 total in case that you wear one out. And you just take the match, run it down the side, bam, and you got a good fire. 100% waterproof. These are great little emergency items to have, especially anyone who does travelings around water. You could pretty much fall completely underwater, and these things will still be safe. They work also in really high winds, so they're very durable, much better than average matches, and they're worth the extra price that you have to pay if you're using them for like an emergency source. You could buy regular matches just for everyday lighting. So there's a few of the methods. Okay, I'm going to go back out here and go over some things about the fire. Okay, so first of all, if you can see right here, when you're making a fire, you want to, I basically define it in 2 categories as far as the way things burn. One thing is how easily does it light, and the other thing is how long does it burn. There are some materials that light extremely easy, but they burn out rather quick. And typically the things that light really easy do burn out quick. The things that are much more difficult to light, they tend to burn a lot longer. Okay? So what you want to do is you don't want to go straight to the main source of fuel, which is a big old clump of fire log. You don't want to go to the main source and just try to light it. If you do that, you're not going to have any success. It's extremely easy to light a fire, just to actually get something actually started, that initial fire. The challenging part is to get enough heat and flames for a long enough period of time to keep the main source of fuel going. And a lot of people don't realize that. So that being said, what you want to do is you want to build your fire in about like 3 different levels of the types of material that you use. The first thing you want to do is light items and put items on the bottom that are extremely easy to light, but they burn out rather quick, like typically within like 1 to 3 minutes. A list of those items are paper. One thing I commonly do with paper is, just so it don't burn out way too quick, I'll fold it 2 or 3 times to make it a little bit more tight so it'll burn a little longer, or I'll twist the length of it except for the end, and then I'll light the end. That slows down how quick it burns, and that's a nice little method. Another item is wood shavings. Light super easy. They light instantly as soon as you touch the flame to them. Within a couple of minutes, once again, they're going to burn out. Pieces of tree bark. That's another thing. Very, very small twigs. By small, I mean like smaller than 1/4 inch wide. I also want to take this time to start by saying any wood that you've gotten, if you take it off of the tree right now, what'll happen is it's going to be wet, and it's not going to burn very well. If it was just growing and actively part of a tree, when you break it off, it's going to have way too high of a moisture content in it to have any good results. So you want to typically look for wood that has already fallen off a tree and been sitting around for days, or if you got a chainsaw, you can cut it and store it to the side for days in advance. You want it to sit around long enough that the moisture content has been mostly removed from it. So keep that in mind, and let's go back to our methods again. I wish I had my daughter out here filming for me, but she's not. Okay, that's the first step. You lay that on the ground. Lights super easy instantly. Now, the one more jump up is stuff that takes a little bit more effort to burn, but it still lights relatively easy. And then the plus about that is it burns a little bit longer. Like these items, we're talking a good 5 to 10 minute, maybe up to 10 minutes of burn time, where those are like 1 to 3. Common list of items are bigger twigs. Compare bigger twigs. We're talking like maybe about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch diameter. Little scrap pieces of wood. Like this is a wood shim that you would use when setting a door. This is a little 1/2 by 3 piece of wood. Here we got a tree was cut down, and these were all the scraps left over. This sort of stuff is excellent for getting a decent flame going for so many minutes while you're trying to get your main source of fuel going. Then I want to cover another area, which is basically, I feel, is separate from all of these items, because these are all natural items. Up here we have a couple accelerants that are not so much naturally occurring. Well, this one kind of is, but I put this here for a reason. These are typical flat, round cotton pads that you can get in any common drugstore in the health beauty department. And what I've done is I've melted a wax candle and you dip these in that candle and then take them out. You dip all of it except for a tiny little piece, and the tiny little piece, which is here, that's where you light it from. And this cotton soaked thing of wax will produce a really good flame for about 5 minutes. And it's great to add to a little pack that you want to take with you if you're hiking or something to help get a fire started, or whether you're doing it around your house, property, or whatever. Here's another item. This is one that I really like. If you notice, it's the size and shape of a cube of ice from an ice tray. And what I've done is I've taken a whole bunch of wood shavings and I filled up an ice cube tray. I've melted a wax candle, and then I filled up the cube, the ice tray, with the wax after it was full of shavings. And then once it started to solidify just a little bit, I dropped a small piece of wick in the top. These little cubes are really handy. Set that under any piece of wood and light it. You got a solid flame going for like 10 or 12 minutes. This is called fat wood. I used to not know what that meant. Fat wood is typically found on pine-bearing trees, and it's not every part of the tree, but they say it's tends to be more. The part you want is saturated with a naturally occurring like sap or liquid that absorbs, and it tends to absorb heavier close to the base of each branch, like where the branch meets up with the main trunk, and also the main trunk and relatively down low. So you got to know how to find it on actual pine tree itself. There's videos on that. Just go look it up. But it's called fat wood. You can buy bags of it for relatively cheap. It'll have like 50 of these in it for like $4. These things are amazing. If you light the easy start part and then put this down there, it will almost instantly create a solid flame. The other thing is this: Sterno Instant Flame Gel. All it is it's a ingredient with the consistency of basically jelly, like from peanut butter and jelly. There it is. The second a flame touches that, you got a fire. So you run a couple beads of that at the bottom of your flame of what you want to do, and you got a fire going. What I will typically do, let me set this up so we can see me again. What I will typically do is I'll grab the main fuel burning log that I want to burn, and I will look for places in that log where there's splits and cracks and imperfections, and I'll run a bead of that in there, and I will soak up, it'll kind of sink into the log a little bit. And so when the flame does hit that main log, I mean, it really convinces the flame to get up in there. It hits that gel and it really sets it off. So there's that. Now we've covered ways to actually light with. We've covered the materials that you want to use to make the fire. And now I'm going to kind of cover how to set up the actual little monument of things that you want to burn. There's a lot of different methods that people can use, but there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. A couple things to keep in mind is this. Fire wants to go, typically naturally wants to go straight up. I mean, when a wind comes, it alters, but it wants to go straight up. You're going to have a lot of heat at the base of the actual flame, and you're going to have a heat on whatever you put directly above that flame. So when you're building a fire, you don't want to set a piece of wood here and then one beside it way over here, one beside it way over here. Okay. You also don't want this massive clump, this massive heap of dense material all scrunched together with no air in between it. Air is Air is highly beneficial to, it's one of the key factors to having a good fire going. So when you're stacking it, what you want to do is think in terms of always having gaps of air between any lumber that you put on the fire. Don't pack everything, like I said, completely on top and against each other. Always have little gaps of air, like an inch, 2 inches. Um, you can start by putting a couple of twigs on the ground one direction, and then you can run wood the other direction over it, and then there's a little bit of air under it to flow, which is beneficial too. But like you set some items, let's say you got a couple of logs, you set them close together on the ground with a little gap between them so that once there is a flame, it's kind of hitting both logs. And then once you've done that, you set another one on top of those, another direction. And as your flame is building, you want to keep setting other items above the previous item so that that flame that's rising is continuously, you're taking what's already burning and it keeps feeding what's above it. I'm going to show you an example I have in the yard to give you an idea of how that works. So let's head out to the yard. We're heading to the yard. The yard is where we're heading. Dead man walking. Okay, this is the fire pit that I made in my backyard. This is one that I've already started to set up for my next fire. I just haven't added the quick burning items, which I will at the last minute. But if you notice how it is, there's a 1 inch gap between these two logs on the bottom, so the air can zip right down the middle. This one here is all, see how it's all chopped up in different levels, and I put some of that gel in there so it can work its way in all the little crevices. That right there is going to burn, that's going to light really good. This nice thick log that I put on top, I have saturated the bottom of it with that gel, and I angled it downwards a little bit so that when this flame starts to build, and there's my fat wood, when this flame starts to build between the two logs and rise, it's going to hit the bottom of that, and we're going to have a really good fire. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw pieces in here. Once I get that first flame lit with the quick starting stuff, I'm going to throw a few pieces in here, and then you wait about 5 minutes or so. I mean, if you see the main flame start to go down, you keep a stock of things like the small pieces of tree bark and the really small twigs that are dried out. You already got a pile of those set to the side. I would get all that set up and extra amounts of that ready before you ever light your fire, and then you're not out running and looking for it. If it's just like on your own property and you live like on a farmhouse, it's not that critical. But if you're like out in the woods and you really need the fire, get everything gathered that you need in advance so that you're not running around looking for more as the fire is trying to go out, and then like you're like you're scrambling. So you get that flame going. Like I said, when you first get that flame going, get those small items that burn kind of quick, but don't burn out right away. Have a nice pile of that ready, and like I said, every couple of minutes, throw a little more in. Wait a couple more minutes again, throw a little more in. You've got to get to where that main source of fuel that you're burning gets really hot for a long period of time, to where it gets to the point where that main log is burning 100% on its own. It's not just being hit by a flame from underneath, but it is burning 100% on its own. It's starting to glow orange, and it is now its own source of fuel, as opposed to a smaller piece just lighting a flame up from under it. Like I said, once you reach that level, you got a solid fire going, you are good to go. And then you gather more of these thick logs and you set them by you. And then now you can actually relax. And then let's say maybe once every hour, every 2 hours, you throw 1 or 2 more of the big logs on there. But once you get that initial work out of the way, all you got to do is once every 1 to 2 hours is take 20 seconds out of your moment and just set a log on there, and you are done. And so there's a bunch of the basics for someone who doesn't really know what to do with how to get a fire going good. And this is Eagle Owl. Thanks for watching.